Thank you guys for joining me here on the last segment of today's show. And like I mentioned before we went to that quick break, we're going to be giving out some grades for these head coaching hires so far through the NFL. It's gone pretty quickly, quite honestly. So we already have almost all the positions filled out other than the Saints. And we got a good idea of who that's going to be, obviously, like we talked about before. So we're just going to go through each team grade, right? These grades are for the team, who they hired, how they went about it, and just my thoughts on them hiring this specific coach and just going through that for all 6 teams. So the first one that we have on here before we say goodbye to Liam Cohen is the New England Patriots. The New England Patriots get a minus from me. Like you guys see it there, it's a perfect match. They didn't waste any time, and they weren't shy about really showing who they wanted as their head coach. Some of the negatives about it was that it was ugly, just how they moved on from Gerard Mayo. I wasn't really a fan of. It felt like, like they were just going to move on from him anyways because they didn't want him at the end of the day. And it didn't seem fair, obviously, for Gerard, right? Because, it seemed like his performance was irrelevant, right? His production or lack thereof, in maybe some people's views, was irrelevant. So if you're not basing it on that, then it feels a little bit unfair. But for Mike Vrabel, the positives of this hire is that you have a relationship with Mike Vrabel. You know what you're getting in him as well, right? As a player, he was, I'm assuming, the exact same way, carrying the same principles from one of the most successful times in New England with the Patriots, carrying that over to his head coaching job now. So you anticipate a lot more of a stable, a lot more of a security, I think, around the head coaching position now, because obviously he has that experience with the Titans, and it was the most obvious move, and I thought that making this hire and how quickly they went about it was good, was proactive, and I'm a fan of that. But again, just the negative sides of how they moved on from Gerard Mayo is really the only negative thing I can say about it. Now I just hope that they give him a good amount of time to really build this team because they got a lot of things to worry about. But in terms of finding their leader, I thought they got one of the highest grades on it from me in this coaching hiring cycle. So that is the first coach we have on here, and then moving on to the second announcement from this coaching cycle, we got Ben Johnson, and not too far off. He also got an A minus, or I should say the Bears got an A minus for hiring Ben Johnson because you not only got the top guy, but you got the top guy for Caleb Williams. Caleb Williams went on the St. Brown Brothers podcast, and you could tell right away that he wanted Ben Johnson to be the head coach, right? He felt like he could give him the best opportunity to grow and develop from an offensive perspective, the great mind that Ben Johnson has for the offensive side of the ball and how they could grow and help Caleb get to that next level. I think the Bears going after, a guy like that and hiring Ben Johnson at the end of the day was good to see because a lot of fans and a lot of people probably felt like the Bears were gonna sell and not go after Ben Johnson, right, as the top guy. They were going to have this obscure candidate that they were just going to hire, and it would have felt like another team that we're going to talk about. But I liked the fact that they went after one of the top guys and that they hired a very successful and sought-after offensive coordinator that now becomes their head coach. And they already got a good amount of pieces there, so pairing Caleb, Rome Odunze, DeAndre Swift, DJ Moore already with Ben Johnson, that really got me to giving this hire for the Chicago Bears an A minus. I thought pairing that up with Ben Johnson seemed too obvious to pass up. So I'm excited once again for the Chicago Bears. I was probably too excited at the beginning of this season because of Matt Eberflus. I should have taken that more into account, but now I think I can have a legitimate excitement around the Bears, right? I'm not a fan of them, but I just think that seeing them kind of bring all these pieces together and hopefully having it work out for them with Ben Johnson, I think that's going to be super exciting to watch, especially in that division. Like, all those games are going to be awesome. So, again, if the Bears are actually good, and I'm holding out hope for Ben Johnson, but he gets an A minus from me. Then the next coach that was hired was his very close friend, his coworker, former coworker now, Aaron Glenn. And the Jets hired Aaron Glenn, and to me, again, these are grades for the organization. And for the organization, I'm giving them a B. And I love Aaron Glenn. I think Aaron Glenn in New York is going to be awesome. It's a great fit. But there are still a lot of questions. And it's not like the Bears where they have a bunch of guys there. And it felt like it was quite obvious that a lot of these losses for the Bears this past season, right? You look at the loss in Detroit, the loss to, I'm forgetting now. Was it I forget who it was. Was it the Packers? I think it was the Packers. It was the Packers when they settled for that field goal and then ended up missing it. Those are just two examples, but it felt like with the Bears that a lot of the problems, and based on how the players also responded after one of their last games, that they felt and everybody else could tell that the coaching and some of the decisions were pretty obvious on the coach and on the guys that make the decisions. Keenan Allen basically said it in one of his post-game interviews. So with them, to make that hire of Ben Johnson, that's why he got a little bit of a higher grade. But with the Jets, a lot of it is on the personnel. A lot of it is on the quarterback and the offensive line still being pretty spotty, and the defense kind of disappointing towards the end of the year. So the personnel around them and the organization as well being so dysfunctional over the last few years gives them a lower grade because they still got a lot of questions to answer. But in terms of just Aaron Glenn, bringing in a former player, someone that cares about the organization, you could tell right away from his introductory press conference that I loved watching how he was very intentful, very direct, and he wasn't going to shy away from some of these topics, some of these questions. And if he didn't want to answer a question, he was going to let you know about it too, right? He wasn't going to let any reporter or any media member kind of bait him into an answer. He was very blunt about that, right? And I think that's the attitude that the Jets sort of need now to get everything under control there, right? Get their act together, basically. And I think Aaron Glenn is the perfect guy to do so because you can tell he really cares about it. So I'm excited to watch. I think it's a great opportunity for Aaron Glenn, and I'm hoping he can turn things around there in New York. And then after Aaron Glenn, we had the news of Pete Carroll, and he gets a slightly lower grade because I think he, again, is a good fit for them with the experience, with the kind of culture builder that he is, and the kind of, just enhancement of everything around their organization. I think Pete Carroll can bring that to the Las Vegas Raiders that just kind of felt that they were just floating and just kind of like existing for right now. It just felt like you never expected much from the Raiders. Like they were just a team that was just going to play any game, and it never felt like there was more to hope for the Raiders is what I'm getting at, right? Despite a big win, a losing streak that was just awful, it didn't matter, right? They were sort of irrelevant in that sense. But I think Pete Carroll can come in and really turn things around there with all of his experience. Like I said, he's a winner, right? He won the national championship and also has won a Super Bowl. Not a lot of people can say they've done that. And he has a lot of continuity, and he's seen a lot, obviously, from his time in Seattle and transitioning from a top-tier defense to kind of rebuilding that team once the Legion of Boom and Russell Wilson era was over. So I think bringing that expertise and that experience and just his knowledge overall is going to be great for the Raiders. So the Raiders bringing him in was great. It's still a B, but in terms of, the long term, right, he is a little bit older. So how much is he going to be able to change? Maybe not in like a 10-year period like some of these other coaches could be there, right? He could probably be here for like 4 maybe, and then is it going to be stable enough for the Raiders to continue that on? That's my only, gripe I guess I have with it, but overall I thought this was a very responsible hire for the Raiders, right? To get things under control as soon as possible, but it didn't get the grade that I gave Liam Cohen. Again, a little bit higher for a lot of the reasons that I gave a B to Aaron Glenn. I like Liam Cohen. I like that he's a good fit for this. I think he's a good fit for this because of the fact that you have Trevor Lawrence and his prior success with Baker Mayfield and whatnot and things like that. But, of course, there comes a lot of doubts, a little bit more doubts with Liam Cohen than I would say like Pete Carroll or like Aaron Glenn, because Liam Cohen, he's bounced around to different places and he's never been a head coach before. So there is that, and that could, be a little bit uneasy for some people, but I'm hopeful for his high level of football IQ in terms of offense and how to run an offense and have a successful one. He just had a top 5 offense with the Buccaneers last season. I think that could do a lot of good in Jacksonville. And they need a guy offensive minded, much like Ben Johnson with Caleb Williams. In that respect, right? You need someone like that to help unlock the potential of Trevor. And once you do that, it unlocks everything for that team. You look at Cliff Kingsbury and Jaden Daniels, right? That relationship flourished, and Jaden, on top of his own personal merit, having a coach like that, offensive minded, that can help you, I think it's hard to replace that. So I think Liam can certainly be that in Jacksonville for the Jaguars. So they got a B from me. A solid hire overall in my eyes. But then, of course, we got the last one, the ever-famous Dallas Cowboys, Brian Schottenheimer. It gets a C, C minus actually, because not only is he a first-time head coach, but again, it's just disappointing a little bit, right? They went with the familiar, the safe option, and a lot of coaching experience as an assistant, but it's different when you're the head guy, right? Dealing with all that pressure, all the media that the Cowboys get, knowing that you're the guy that's supposed to be leading this ship. And I don't want to pile too much on him, but it's more so a grade for the Cowboys. Not so much Brian, because, no one's going to say no to this opportunity, right? But as the Cowboys, I felt like they kept it too close. I feel like a teacher that has gotten back all of these assignments from my students, and I just graded all of them. And this last student gave me a 2-page paper when the requirement was 3 pages, right? It was a 3-page paper, and the Cowboys gave me 2 pages and 2.5 pages and just the sources listed on the rest of the second page, right? It just felt like they did the bare minimum. It's like, all right, you kind of did half the assignment, but you obviously didn't really try that hard. You didn't do anything that really stood out, and this is the Cowboys we're talking about, right? America's team. I thought there was a higher standard to be held upon when you're labeled as that, but I guess apparently not, and it just doesn't give me as much excitement or as much hope that there is going to be much change with this organization. And I say that obviously because it feels like Brian Schottenheimer is not going to have as much power to change things, change the culture, change some of the players that he wants to bring in as much as Ben Johnson or Aaron Glenn or Liam Cohen, right? It feels like all those guys are going to have a pretty big say, where I can't say the same about the Dallas Cowboys. So it's disappointing. It's just like, all right, like they got a new guy in there. It's probably going to be the same thing. So they get a C minus for me. And that is all the coaches that have made the hires so far. Those are the grades I'm giving them. Leave your thoughts and comments in the comment section, obviously, to let me know what you think of my list, or if there's something you would have done differently if you were in my position. So with that, though, that is going to be the end of today's show. I want to thank you guys, as always, for joining me on today's episode of the Chip Shot Football Podcast. And as a reminder, please remember to like, follow, and subscribe to the show, and going and checking out more content around the Chip Shot Football Podcast on YouTube. You know where to find it. GSMC Sports Network channel, the GSMC Podcast Network channel, where you can see more coverage around the NFL, breaking news, reactions, discussions, just conversation around the NFL with me, Manny Maradiaga, as your host. Thanking you guys for joining me, and I hope to see you guys all back here again tomorrow at 6:30 p.m. Eastern Time.
Let's go. I wake up to a little bit of drool on my pillow, feel like it's gonna be a bad day. Yeah, I'm tired of shit, and the coffee ain't hit yet, damn, ain't that great. I don't wanna go to